Recently I've noticed that there is a tendency for many bow hunters to move back towards heavier arrow setups and in particular heavier front of center. And what the heavier front of center simply means is that we are adding more weight up front. Instead of using the existing, let's say 100 grain, we could go over to a 125 or 150, 200 and so forth, right up to about 315 grains. That would be the easy way to do, just to get field points of various weights and try them out. In other words, experiment, shoot through paper, shoot down range, see what works. But oftentimes we don't have access, this particular where I stay, we don't have access to all the options. So now we need to make our own options. The one method I used was to use steel wool, and then you create a plug, push it into the back of your arrow, ram it down into a plug into the front of the arrow, and we can create some front of center effect by doing that. Works quite well. The other method that I've discovered recently is you buy these brass weights. They're quite expensive. This is a 30 grain, and you get others that can screw into them, so you can cascade them and create heavier weights. Now, assuming we've glued our insert into our arrow already and we don't want to have to pull it out, because oftentimes we damage the front of the arrows as I have done, trying to get the inserts out by heating up and by putting the drill in and ramming it out, we often split the front of the arrow. So I don't want to do that anymore. But I do want to experiment with different weights. So anyhow, I took a hacksaw and I cut a slot into the back of this insert, this extra little weight, and then I went to the hardware store. I bought myself a 5mm thick threaded rod bar, and I hit it with a hammer to get it a bit flat, and then I ground it into a screwdriver, a nice screwdriver point. So this now will fit into the arrows which I'm using. After that, we can simply take this weight, we can remove the back of, in other words, take the knockout, pop that in, we then push it forward, push it down to the front, and provided you have got inserts that can screw in from both sides, you'll feel it bite into there, and then we can proceed to tighten it. And there we go, it's nice and tight now, and there we go. What I do in addition to that, I use a bit of Loctite. So I'll put some Loctite on that thread, because remember this arrow is going to be ramming into the butt and we don't want it per chance coming loose. The other thing is sometimes the threaded portion onto what you're screwing in might be very long, so you need to just grind it a bit shorter so that you don't want it to go through and meet up with the field point or whatever you're screwing in from the other side. So those are things one has to look for. Assuming we can't get the brass inserts, like in my case, I mean they're far away, I have to order them, wait for them, they're expensive. Well, field points only cost between 7 and 10 rand. So you make a little makeshift screw in holder on one of your old arrows so that you can go to the grinder, and then I normally just grind them to the same thickness that they will fit into the shaft snugly, and then I weigh them, and then I cut and grind until I get them down to the exact weight that I would like, whether it be 30 grains, 60 grains or whatever. And then you end up with something as a finished product looking like that. This is a 60 grain that I created. After that also you can just pop it into the arrow. It's the same procedure. Shove it down to the front, locate the little slot with your screwdriver and you screw it in, and there you see it's tightening up nicely now. Anyway, so those are two different methods, using either the actual broadhead or the field point as your extra weight, which is actually the best method to use, I would imagine, because it puts everything quite far forward on your arrows and it increases the front of center quite fast. Or you can simply make up your own weights which you can screw into the back. Use Loctite as I said, because then they won't rattle out. or if you can have access to the brass bushes and you can afford to buy those, then you can go ahead and do so. So I hope this tip was useful to you, as in my case it's very useful, because now if I don't want that weight, I simply screw it back out and then I'm back to what I started off with.